The Story of Mimi-nashi-Hoichi. More than 700 years ago, at Danora in the Straits of Shimonoseki, was fought the last battle of the long contest between the Heike, or Taira clan, or the Genji, or Minamoto clan. There the Heike perished utterly, with their women and children, and their infant emperor likewise, now remembered as Antocteno. And the sea and the shore have been haunted for 700 years elsewhere. I told you about the strange crabs from there, called the Heike crabs, which have human faces on their backs, and are said to be the spirit of Heike warriors. But there are many strange things to be seen hard along that coast. On dark nights, thousands of ghostly fires hover about the beach, or that flit above the waves, pale lights which fishermen call onibi, or demon fires. And whenever the winds are up and the sound of great shouting comes from the sea, like a comma of a battle. In former years, the Heike were much more restless than they now are. They would rise about the ships passing in the night, and try to sink them, and all times they would watch for swimmers to pull them down. It was in order to appease those debts that the Buddhist temple was built at Akamagaseki. A cemetery also was made close by, near the beach, and within it were set up monuments inscribed with the names of the drowned emperor and of his great vessels, and the Buddhist services were regularly performed there on behalf of the spirits of them after the temple had been built and the tombs erected. The Heike gave lost trouble them before, but they continued to do queer things at intervals, providing that they had not found the perfect peace. Some centuries ago, there lived at Akamagaseki a blind man named Hoichi, who was famed for his skill in recitation and in playing upon a biwa. Biwa means the music instrument, a kind of a four-string lute. The playing upon biwa. From childhood, he had been trained to recite and pray, and while at art he had surpassed his teachers. As a professional biwa hoshi, he became famous chiefly by his recitations of the history of the Heike and Genji. And it is said that when he sang the song of the Battle of Janora, even the goblins could not refrain from tears. At the onset of his career, Hoichi was very poor, but he found a good friend to help him. The priest of the Amiraji was fond of poetry and music, and he often invited Hoichi to the temple to pray. Afterwards, being much impressed by the wonderful skill of the lad, the priest proposed that Hoichi should make the temple his house, and this offer was gratefully accepted. Hoichi was given a room in the temple building, and in return for food and lodging, he was required only to gratefully to the priest with a musical performance on certain evenings, when otherwise engaged. One summer night, the priest was called away to perform a Buddhist service at the house of a bit prisoner, and he went there with his acolyte, leaving Hoichi alone in the temple. It was a hot night, and the blind man sought to cool himself on the veranda before his sleeping room. The veranda overlooked a small garden in the rear of the Amiraji. There Hoichi waited for the priest to return and tried to relieve his solitude by practicing upon his biwa. Midnight passed and the priest didn't appear, but the atmosphere was still too warm for comfort within doors, and Hoichi remained outside. At last he heard steps approaching him from the back gate. Somebody crossed the garden, advanced to the veranda, and halted directly in front of him. But it was not the priest. A deep voice called the blind man's name, abruptly and unceremoniously in the manner of a samurai summoning an inferior. Hoichi. Hoichi was too much startled for the moment to respond, and the voice called again in a tone of a harsh command. Hoichi! Hi! Answered the blind man, frightened by the menace in the voice. I am blind. I cannot know who calls. There is nothing to fear, the stranger exclaimed, speaking more gently. I am stopping near this temple, and have been sent you with the message. My present lord, a person of exceedingly high rank, is now staying in Akamagaseki with many noble attendants. He wishes to view the scene of the Battle of Janora, and today he visited that piece, having heard of your skill in reciting the story of the battle. He now desires to hear your performance, so you will take your beer and come with me at once to the house where the august assembly is waiting. In those times, the order of the samurai was not to be lightly disobeyed. Hoichi donned his sandal, took his biwa, and went away with the stranger, who guided him deftly, but obliged him to walk very fast. The hand that guided was iron, and the crown of the warrior's stride proved him fully armed. Probably some praise god on duty. Hoichi's first alarm was over. He began to imagine himself in good luck. For remembering the retainer's assurance about a person of exceedingly high rank, he thought that the lord who wished to hear the recitation could not be less than a daimyo of the first class. Presently the samurai halted, and Hoichi became aware that they had arrived at a large gateway, and he wondered, for he could not remember any large gate in that part of the town, except the main gate of Amiraji. Kaimon, the samurai called, and there was a sound of entering, and the twine passed on. They traversed the space on garden, and halted again before some entrance, and the retainer cried in a loud voice, within there, I have brought Hoichi. Then came a sound of feet hurrying, and the screens sliding, and the rain doors opening, and the voices of women in converse. By the language of the women, Hoichi knew them to be domestics in some noble household, but he could not imagine to what place he had been conjectured. Little time was allowing for conjecture, after he had been helped to mount several stone steps, upon the last of which he was told to leave his sandals. A woman's hand guided him along interminable reaches of polished planking, and round pillared angles too many to remember, and over with amazing to matted for, into the middle of some vast apartment. There he thought that many great people were assembled. The sound of the rustling of silk was like the sound of leaves in a forest. He heard also a great humming of voices, choking in undertones, and the speech was the speech of courts. Hoichi was told to put himself at ease, and he found a kneeling cushion ready for him, after having taken his place upon and tuned his instrument, and the voice of a woman were divined to be the Rojo, or matron in charge of the female service, addressed him, saying, "It is now required that the history of the Heike be decided to the accompaniment of the biwa. Now, the entire reciter will have required a time of many nights. Therefore, Hoichi ventured a question. As the whole of the story is not soon told, what portion is it earnestly desired that I now recite?" The woman's voice made answer. "Recite the story of the battle at Danura, for the pity of it is the most deep." Then Hoichi lifted up his voice and chanted the chant of the fight of the bitter sea, wonderfully making his biwa to sound like the straining of oars and the rushing of ships, the wheel and the hissing of arrows, and the shouting and the trampling of men, the crashing of steel upon helmets, the plunging of slain in the flood, and to left and right of men in the poses of his playing. He could hear voices murmuring praise. How marvelous an artist! Never in a well-owned province was playing hard like this. Not in all the empire is there another singer like Hoichi. Then fresh courage came to him, and he played and sang yet better than before, and a hush of wonder deepened about him. But when at last he came to tell the fate of the fair and helpless, the future separation of the women and children, and the death of Ninoama, with the imperial infant in her arms, then all the listeners uttered together one long, shuddering cry of anguish, and thereafter they wept on the words so loudly and so widely that the blind man was frightened by the violence of the grief that he had made. For much time too sobbing and the wailing continued, but gradually the sounds of lamentation died away, and again in the great stillness that followed, Hoichi heard the voice of the woman whom he supposed to be the Rojo. She said, "Although we had been assured that you are a very skillful player upon the biwa, and without an equal in recitative, we do not know that anyone could be so skillful as you have proved yourself tonight. Our Lord has been pleased to say that he intends to bestow upon you a fitting reward, but he desires that you shall perform before him once every night for the next 6 nights, after which time he will probably make his August return journey. Tomorrow night, therefore, you are to come here at the same hour. The retainer of tonight conducted you will be sent for you. There is another matter about which I have been ordered to inform you. It is required that you shall speak to no one of your visit here during the time of our Lord's August sojourn at Akamagaseki, as he is traveling incognito. He commands that no mention of these things be made. You are now free to go back to your temple." After Hoichi and Jari expressed his thanks, a woman's hand conducted him to the entrance of the house, where the same retainer who had before guided him was waiting to take him home. The retainer led him to the veranda at the rear of the temple, and there bade him farewell. It was almost dawn when Hoichi returned, but his absence from the temple had not been observed, as the priest coming back at a very late hour had supposed him asleep During the day, Hoichi was able to take some rest, and he said nothing about his stranger adventure. In the middle of the following night, the samurai again came for him and led him to the August assembly, where he gave another recitation with the same success that he had attended his previous performance. But during this second visit, his absence from the temple was accidentally discovered, and after his return in the morning, he was summoned to the presence of the priest, who said to him, in a tone of kindly reproach, "We have been very anxious about you, friend Hoichi. To go out bright and alone at so late an hour is dangerous. Why did you go without telling us? I could have ordered a servant to accompany you. And where have you been?" Hoichi answered enviously, "Pardon me, like friend, I had to attend to some private business, and I could not arrange the matter at any other hour." The priest was surprised rather than pained by Hoichi's sense. He left it to be unnatural and suspected something wrong. He feared that the bride lad had been bewitched or seduced by some evil spirits. He didn't ask any more questions, but he privately instructed the manservants of the temple to keep watch upon Hoichi's movements and to follow him in case that he should again leave the temple after dark. On the very next night, Hoichi was seen to leave the temple, and the servants immediately lighted their lanterns and followed after him. But it was a rainy night and very dark, and before the temple folks could get to the roadway, Hoichi was disappeared. Evidently, he had walked very fast, a strange thing, considering his blindness, for the road was in a bad condition. The man hurried through the streets, making inquiries at every house which Hoichi was accustomed to visit. But nobody could give them any news of him. At last, as they are returning to the temple by way of the shore, they were startled by the sound of a biwa, furiously played in the cemetery of the Amidaji, except for some ghostly fires, such as usual fitted to their on dark nights. All was blackness in that direction. But the men at once hastened to the cemetery, and there, by the help of their lanterns, they discovered Hoichi, sitting alone in the rain before the memorial tomb of Antocteno, making his biwa resound, and loudly chanted the chant of the Battle of the Daunora, and behind him, and about him, and everywhere above the tombs, the fires of the dead were burning like candles. Never before had so great a host of onibi appeared in the sight of a mortal man. "Hoichi-san, Hoichi-san," the servants cried, "you are bewitched, Hoichi-san." But the blind man didn't seem to hear. Sternly, he made his biwa to rattle and ring and cry. More and more wildly he chanted the chant of the Battle of the Daunora. They caught hold of him. They shouted into his ear, "Hoichi-san, Hoichi-san, come home with us at once." Reprovingly he spoke to them. "To interrupt me in such a manner before this august assembly will not be tolerated." Whereat, in spite of the wildness of the thing, the servants could not help laughing, sure that he had been bewitched. They now seized him and bore him up on his feet, and by main force hurried him back to the temple, where he was immediately relieved of his wet cloth by order of the priest, and reclothed and made to eat and drink. Then the priest insisted upon a full explanation of his friend's astonishing behavior. Hoichi longer hesitated to speak, but at last, finding that his conduct had led the alarm angered the good priest, he decided to abandon his resolve, and he related everything that had happened from the time the first visit of the samurai. The priest said, "Hoichi, my poor friend, you are now in great danger. How unfortunate that you didn't tell me all this before. Your wonderful skill in music has indeed brought you into strange trouble. By this time you must be aware that you have not been visiting any house whatever, but have been passing your nights in the cemetery among the tombs of the Heike, and it was before the memorial tomb of Antokteno. There were people tonight found you, sitting in the rain. All that you have been imagining was illusion, except the calling of the dead. By once obeying them, you have put yourself in their power. If you obey them again, after what has already occurred, they will tear you in pieces, but they will have destroyed you sooner or later. In any event, now I shall not be able to remain with you tonight. I am called away to perform another service, but before I go, it will be necessary to protect your body by writing a holy text upon it." Before sundown, the priest and his acolyte stripped Hoichi. Then, with their writing brushes, they traced upon his breast and back, head and face and neck and limbs and hands and feet, even upon the sole of his feet and upon all parts of his body, the text of the Holy Sutra called Hanya Shinkyo. When this had been done, the priest instructed Hoichi, saying, "Tonight, as soon as I go away, you must seat yourself on the veranda and wait. You will be cold, but whatever may happen, do not answer, and do not move. Say nothing, and sit still, as if meditating. If you start or make any noise, you will be torn asunder. Do not get frightened, and do not think of calling for help, because no help could save you. If you do exactly as I tell you, the danger will pass, and you will not think more to fear." After that, the priest and the acolyte went away, and Hoichi seated himself on the veranda according to the instructions given him. He laid his biwa on the planking beside him, and assuming the attitude of meditation, remained quite still, taking care not to cough or to breathe audibly. For hours he stayed thus. Then from the doorway he heard the steps coming. They passed the gate, crossed the garden, approached the veranda, stopped directly in front of him. "Hoichi!" the deep voice called. But the blind man held his breath and sat motionless. "Hoichi!" grimly called the voice a second time. Then a third time, savagely, "Hoichi!" Hoichi remained as still as stone, and the voice grumbled, "No answer. That won't do. Must see where the fellow is." There was a noise of heavy feet mounting upon the veranda. The feet approached deliberately, halted beside him. Waited for long minutes, during which Hoichi felt his whole body shake to the beating of his heart. There was dead silence. At last the gulf voice muttered close to him, "Here's the biwa. But of the biwa prayer I see only 2 years. So that explains why he didn't answer. He had no mouth to answer him. There is nothing left to him but his ear." Now to my lord, those years I would take in proof that the august commands have been obeyed so far as was possible. At that instant Hoichi felt this ear gripped by fingers of iron, and torn off. Glad as the pain was, there gave no cry. The heavy footfalls receded along the veranda, descended into the garden, passed out to the road wall, seized from either side of his head. The blind man felt a thick warm trickling, but he dared not lift his hand. Before sunrise, the priest came back. He hastened at once to the veranda in the hill, stepped and slipped upon something crumbly, and uttered a cry of horror. For he saw by the light of his lantern that the crumbliness was blood. But he perceived the Hoichi sitting there, in the attitude of meditation, with the blood still oozing from his wound. "My poor Hoichi," cried the startled priest, "what is this? You have been hurt." At the sound of his friend's voice, the blind man felt safe. He burst out sobbing and cheerfully told his adventure of the night. "Poor, poor Hoichi!" the priest exclaimed. "All my fault, my very biggest fault. Everywhere upon your body, the holy texts have been written, except upon your ears. I trusted my acolyte to do that part of the work, and it was very, very wrong of me not to have made sure that he had done it. Well, the matter cannot now be helped. We can only try to heal your hurts as soon as possible. Cheer up, friend. The danger is now well over. You will never again be troubled by those visitors." With the aid of a good doctor, Hoichi soon recovered from his injuries. The story of his strange adventure spread far and wide, and soon made him famous. Many noble persons went to Akamagaseki to hear him recite, and large presents of money were given to him, so that he became a wealthy man. But from the time of his adventure, he was known only by the appellation of Mimi-nashi-Hoichi, Mimi-nashi the Earless.